Before I knew her, my wife grew up attending and then later on working and spending whole summers at this camp in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of New Mexico. She's told me countless stories about her time there. Stories about friends and pranks and hikes, about being a counselor and working in the kitchen and singing under the stars. She told me about trusting her life to Christ there. A few years after we married, the camp had a special anniversary and had a reunion of sorts, and Jessica was kind enough to bring me along as her plus one. We arrive, and of course it's gorgeous, and there's so much joy and happiness as old friends reconnect, but the experience for both of us was more than that. For me, it was this tremendous gift to be allowed into that part of her story, to be in a place that had reliably connected her with the divine year after year, to be able to walk on ground. I realized I was standing on ground that had been holy for her. Do you have a spot like that? A place that reliably connects you with the divine? A place where your spiritual antenna just seem to get better reception than anywhere else in the world? A place that's holy for you, where you've experienced a holy moment or two or 20, where calm comes over you and the nearness of God envelops you. I recently discovered a place like that for me. It's this beautiful retreat center down south on the banks of the Mississippi River. Every trail I walk on there, every tree that I pass by seems to have something to teach me. Every time I plop down in a chair, it's like Jesus pulls up a chair right beside me. I mean, it's just rich with God. It's holy for me. But I imagine the most holy places on earth aren't that remarkable. They're probably not camps or churches or retreat centers. They're probably places that we are quick to overlook. I mean, the first time God ever ambushed me, like spoke directly to me, I was in my freshman dorm room, and it didn't even smell good in there. And of course, when God ambushed the whole world, right, it was in a manger in a stable in this little forgotten town of Bethlehem. I imagine you've encountered God in all kinds of places. In your grandma's kitchen, at the lake fishing, working in your garage, chasing after your kid's bike or staring at them in their crib. Maybe you've even encountered God in a hospital room. One of the craziest ideas that we carry around in our heads is that there's some big separation between the sacred and the ordinary. But as we've seen, there's folks in the Bible, and folks like us, but folks in the Bible like Jacob and Moses who've had experiences where they would have to beg to differ. A few years ago, some friends introduced me to this book, Every Moment Holy. Do you know about this? It's a book of prayers for the modern life, like even the most mundane parts of life. So basically anything you can think of that takes up your time, there's a prayer for that. There's a prayer for the hurried preparation of a meal. There's a prayer for washing windows. There's a prayer for when you're unemployed. There's a prayer for changing diapers. There's a prayer for when you've lost electricity. That one would have come in handy recently, huh? There's a prayer for taking a sick day. There's a prayer for gardening. There's a prayer even for feeling awkward in social gatherings. And what I love about this is I love the idea of hallowing a mundane moment in our lives, of eventually becoming the sort of people who hallow every moment of our lives. I mean, as Psalm says, this is the day that the Lord has made. In other words, if I can't discover God in the moment where I am, I'll never discover him. Or to reverse the perspective, if God is the creator of all, if the whole earth is full of his glory, then of course he can make himself known to us anywhere, anytime. We need holy moments. And whether those are spontaneous or purposeful, we need those moments to open our eyes to the something greater that's all around us. In the introduction to this book, they write that there are no unsacred moments. There are only sacred moments and moments we have forgotten are sacred. I love that idea. Now, in the first lesson in this series, we talked about Moses and his encounter with God in the burning bush. Let's go back to that for just a bit. Imagine if Moses had seen something going on over there out of the corner of his eye, but just kept walking. I mean, that could have happened, right? if he was distracted, if he was stressed, if he was in a hurry, or if he just didn't have enough curiosity. I mean, he didn't know it was God's presence until he stopped and got much closer. Moses could have said to himself, I think I'll come back tomorrow if it's still burning, when I've got a bit more time. But then, if he had said that, if he had done that, he wouldn't be Moses. We wouldn't know his story. He wouldn't be the guy who led God's people out of slavery. He'd just be this guy hiding out in the desert, herding sheep. Notice this. Exodus chapter 3. Just notice this one verse, verse 4. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, that's when he called to Moses. God waited to see if Moses would come take a closer look. And then he spoke. Now, you and I cannot predict the holy, and we cannot manufacture transcendent experiences. And like it or not, far more of our time is going to be in ordinary places than not. But what we can do is keep a lookout. We can notice. We can pray and seek and slow ourselves down enough to see if something's actually on fire. The key is to remember, right? That holiness is all around, that the whole earth is full of God's glory. There's holiness in every moment. We need to banish this old dualistic notion from our heads that there's nothing holy about the physical, about flesh and blood and soil and stone. I believe that work and play and suffering and celebration are all part of God's story. And so every single one of those moments is sacred. Brother Lawrence is this monk who's famous for a collection of writings called Practicing the Presence of God. And what he affirmed from his own experience is that God is near, and the issue for us is we just need to notice that. He writes, and I think this is so brilliant, he writes, our sanctification, in other words, our becoming holy, our sanctification does not depend upon certain works, but upon doing for God that which we ordinarily do for ourselves. Our sanctification does not depend upon certain works, but upon doing for God that which we ordinarily do for ourselves. In other words, we don't need a special assignment or calling to live holy lives. Holiness happens in ordinary moments too. It happens when our eyes are open to God and we do whatever it is we were doing for ourselves, but not for ourselves, for Him. Tish Harrison Warren recently wrote a book called Liturgy of the Ordinary. It's a fantastic book. And it's all about how every part of an ordinary day can be an opening to God. To borrow from some of her chapter titles, she talks about how waking up can be a daily ritual where we reclaim our identity as the beloved of God. She talks about how brushing teeth can be this reminder of the body that God has given us to live in and can kind of set our posture for the day. She talks about how losing your keys can be maybe the reminder that you need towards humility, perhaps even open you up to confession. Eating leftovers can be a reminder that God nourishes us in all sorts of ways. Sending emails and receiving emails can be, this one's a hard one, can be a reminder to bless and not curse. Talking with a friend can be a reminder of our wiring for community. And going to sleep at night, a reminder that we're not infinite, that we're made for sleep, rest, and Sabbath. I hope you will keep a lookout for the holy. I believe that a holy God is making us into a holy people. I believe there's a holy path for each of us, and I believe our days are full of holy places and holy moments. Let's recognize and pursue the sacred, friends, because the sacred is pursuing